Hey everyone, welcome to a very special emergency episode of The Field Between. My name is Ahmed.
I'm Yasmin.
And you woke up this morning and I don't know what happened, but you said that you needed to do some hot takes. So.
Oh, me. Yes, I did. I was like,
yeah,
I want
what's
to use
up?
our itty bitty platform for hot takes.
Okay.
I think a lot of people are feeling this way, just processing the election. Thought it'd be helpful to come on here and rant about it a little bit. Because there's not enough of that on the internet. I want to add to the noise.
Tell me about this election. What happened?
Yeah, so Trump won.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
That's what you wanted? Is that your hot take?
No, that's not what I wanted. That's very much not what I wanted.
Okay. Right.
But I wasn't shocked. Yeah. I think we both predicted that Trump would win. But then right before the election, I was like, maybe Harris will pull it off. Like I was feeling a little, I wouldn't even go hopeful because I didn't really like Harris, but like less pessimistic.
Well, all the pollsters had been like, oh, another is going to be a slam dunk for Harris. I think if we learned one thing, it's that
polling is highly inaccurate.
They're just like so, yeah, like these people are also like so out of touch, and they are also the same people that I feel to a certain extent a lot of the candidates themselves are paying attention to, and they're like, oh, this is what the American people care about. This is what the American people care about. And you just ignore the actual people. So you like get the sense that people actually aren't like alienated or riled up by like us doing a genocide or by us ignoring the working class. And then you have to act surprised when it happens.
Yeah, it's definitely a bit of an echo chamber effect. I agree with you. And it's also just like, even for those who have the best of intents, it's a really imprecise science, and it's not like helpful to put so much stock in it.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people were less surprised than last time, though. In 2016, it's kind of like fool me once thing. I think people were kind of wanting to believe the polls, and I can empathize with that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Me, I just love campaigns, and both teams went out there, played very hard, and a campaign won. So I don't know.
Okay.
That's.
Yeah. I mean, look, here's the thing. I think I don't wished at all to come across as dismissive of like the very real threat that a Trump presidency poses to a lot of people that we hold dear. A lot of trans folks, a lot of people are worried about reproductive rights, and I think that's totally fair.
Yeah. I want to add in there too, like all of those are absolutely very legitimate. I feel like something that is bothering me that is getting lost is that a lot of people seem to think like, oh, well, if you didn't support Kamala Harris, then you are coming at it from a position of privilege because you're endangering like these other people, and like at the end of the day, you don't have any skin in the game. And I'm like, I think I told you this, right? Like it just kind of rubs me the wrong way because one, I didn't vote for Donald Trump. Two, I'm a naturalized citizen and an immigrant and like the son of immigrants and someone who is generally critical of whatever party is in power and like affiliated with like protests and things like that. And Trump's administration and his like judicial appointees and like the people he wants to appoint to his security cabinet are looking for legal theories to be able to revoke citizenship status for exactly that kind of profile and like deport those people, right? So it's not like I'm not
you're not sitting here clapping at like
and
people being more vulnerable, including yourself potentially. Yeah
in addition to like obviously like I feel for everyone who's queer, trans, and
especially folks who are trans.
And also like women who are worried about reproductive health. It's like to just say like, oh, one, you don't care, and two, you don't have any skin in the game is kind of misguided.
Yeah, totally agree with that. And look, we've said this before, but I think that in a lot of ways, Trump may be an accelerator of awful things that were already happening. But I think more than a lot of folks who are kind of liberals would like to admit, it is an accelerator. It's not a wholesale start of these horrors, right? I mean, Kamala refused to take a position when asked to defend trans rights. She said she'd leave it up to the states.
Yep.
Abortion has already eroded across this country, in large part because the Obama campaigned on the promise partially to kind of codify Roe v. Wade. He did not. The Democrats have done nothing to codify Roe v. Wade. And I think when we critique the Democrats, we're not trying to let the Republicans off the hook. It's just that there should be more meaningful differences between Democrats and Republicans. And that was the ultimate failure of this campaign, I think, right? That it was a softer Republican message. It was 100% the imaginary voter who was swayed by Liz Cheney is
and
not
Dick
a real
Cheney.
person.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, they, instead of going for actual, I think the thing that we would advocate for, that I would certainly advocate for, is a hard swing left, like actual progressive social policies that will speak to like real material realities.
Yeah.
Were not on the table. There was no actual policy proposals for some kind of minimum wage, no policy proposals to actually do anything about abortion, just kind of like vague notions and sentiments. Very little in the way of concrete kind of asks from the campaign.
Yeah, and immediately a lot of, this is online discourse, right? So take it for what it's worth. But immediately a lot of people who were mad that Kamala lost started saying things like, well, I hope Trump turns Gaza into a parking lot. We'll see how you feel when you get mass deportations, and all this stuff, which one tells me that they were never really interested in actually alleviating people's pain with regard to those issues. But two, they're trying to make it seem like it was Arabs and Muslims and people who were generally upset about Gaza as being the reason that Kamala lost. And I think just looking at the numbers, I'm not convinced that that's actually true, right? Like I wish Kamala had lost on the issue of Gaza, right? But it really just seems like you said, right? They didn't put forth a positive vision that actually had radical, not even radical, but like somewhat
any kind of transformational potential. Yeah, it was
a
very much
departure
just
from the careening minecart that we're on right now toward disaster.
Yeah, it was very much like, hey, vote for me because I'm not as bad as this guy, and that is not compelling to people who are struggling. And this is not an excuse for the many people who obviously voted partially motivated by racism and by sexism and ill intent. Like, that's the other thing. If you want to come for like Arab voters, you want to come for Latino voters, white people vote for Trump. That is a fucking statistical fact, right? And like, who doesn't vote for Trump is Black people. Like, this is like a boring thing that is true that continues to be true. Yeah. And, brown people got a little more mixed up, but I think it is so... I think that we can win back some of those people with good economic policy, but it is still disturbing that they support like kind of a fascist. But to be fair, we already have a lot of kind of echoes of fascism. It's just someone who's a little bit more transparent about it.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Like, I think that's been the critique people have been making is you're actually putting forth like diet fascist policies. You just don't revel in it the same way that your opponent does. And if your strategy is to say, well, I'm going to ignore the left kind of most base that is like pushing me to actually do the work to formulate some sort of achievable policies that I'll be measured against. And I'm going to go for the people who would be motivated by a Dick Cheney endorsement. Why do you think those people are going to vote for you over Trump?
Right.
Like,
right.
Like that does. If I have a choice between a diet fascist, if I'm a fascist or someone who has fascist tendencies, right? I don't want to like overblow this whole thing. But if I kind of just like tend toward that nativistic, nationalistic thing, and then I see someone who's like, I'm going to kind of do that, but I won't be happy about it, and I'll make you kind of feel bad about it. And then like the guy who's like, yeah, we're going to fucking do that and it's going to rock. Like, why wouldn't I just go with the one who makes me feel good?
Yeah. And I don't think that Gaza was like the issue. I think most Americans are not invested enough or like not well educated enough in foreign policy for that to be the case.
Yeah.
But it does seem highly likely that it at least influenced one swing state, which is Michigan. And I looking at kind of polling data, like specifically the Republicans won. They went up by 9 points in Wayne County, which is where Dearborn is located. Like there were considerable Republican gains. And we've already talked about the kind of absolute disgust that we have for, because again, Arab is an ethnic category. This actually includes like Christians in this case specifically. And then Muslims can include Arabs, but also other ethnic groups. But nothing but absolute disgust for Arabs and Muslims who endorse Trump.
Yeah.
Having said that, it again kind of speaks, I think, to the just like absolute like way that the Democrats just shitted on these people.
Yep.
Like literally like trotted out war criminals, daughters of war criminals. I listened to like a large
fucking Richie Torres.
Who's that?
He's the representative from New York who's like, oh yeah, Israel's like the sixth, or Tel Aviv's like the sixth borough of New York.
Okay.
They took him. I'm like, you took even Richie Torres there?
Even
what?
Bill Clinton, who honestly like,
Bill Clinton.
I don't like I've never liked him as a person or a lot of his policies and what he stands for, but used to like have a little bit of game, I think.
Yeah.
Just totally like to the point where like some people were conspiracy theory and I was kind of like, maybe. Like it felt like he was trying to fucking tank Kamala Harris because he was talking to Arab voters and was saying just stuff like basically like we have to kill Palestinians essentially. Like it really was not that fucking far from that. Like we have to do this to protect Israel. Like so condescending, so speaking down to them. Yeah. Like they did everything possible to lose that place.
Right.
Yeah, and they don't really have anyone to blame but themselves. And it's so frustrating because we all have to kind of like suffer the consequences.
Yeah.
The only thing that makes me feel like, okay, this can be a place for redemption is that now the Republicans have the Senate. It looks like they might have the House too, right?
Yeah.
They have the presidency.
They already had the House.
They already had the House, right? They maintained the House. They got the Senate, including it looks like one of our senators flipped to be Republican. Did they call that yet?
I don't know if they've officially.
It's like
called
leaning towards them. They haven't called it yet.
Yeah. Even without that, they still have like a pretty sizable majority there.
I will work very, very hard, and I've been thinking about this actually, like what this means for me personally, to try and there has to be like a viable, actual progressive solution when we get to the midterms next time. And there has to be non-electoral forms of organizing that already have been happening that we are more invested in.
Yeah.
But like, you can't just come back with the same answer again.
Yeah.
And I know that people are frustrated with Bernie because he threw his hat into the ring, but honestly, I am somewhat sympathetic because I feel like I landed in a similar place. But he came out with such a great statement that I thought was like just perfect. I'm going to read a section of it. It should come as no great surprise the Democratic Party, which has abandoned working class people, would find that the working class has abandoned them. While the Democratic leadership defends the status quo, the American people are angry and want change, and they're right. I feel like that's such an excellent diagnosis of like everyday working class people who are paying a lot for groceries, who have not seen their wages increase. And also a lot of like working class people and not even working class people in blue states did turn towards Trump for this reason.
Yeah.
Like not enough that it influenced electoral politics in terms of the presidency, but surprising numbers of people in New York and California voted red. And a lot of people also like, you know, Trump won the popular vote, which was not on my bingo card. I thought he was going to win the electoral college, but not the popular vote. But the number of people who went out and voted, especially for Biden last time, people just sat home this time. Like the numbers are different. The percentages have changed, but the numbers are different. So really what happened is the Democrats just fucking lost people. They did not come out for them because there was nothing to be excited about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So instead of doing things like, again, you know, I think they just do need to be raked over the coals for embracing people like Richie Torres, Liz Cheney, Dick Cheney, and just trying to like bring those hits back. And while at the same time spurning and refusing to embrace communication from people like Sean Fain and what's his name, O'Brien from the Teamsters Union, and Chris Smalls from the Amazon Union. These are all people who did try to make inroads with the Democratic Party at their conventions, and you know, they were just like not given speaking slots, or if they were, it was just kind of like not really prime time, and like the campaign just didn't really care to be seen with them, right? And what I've seen since the results became clear is that, and even from before then, the analysis of the Democratic Party is like wrong. Like they have it backwards. Like, and I'll use myself as an example. I already was not going to vote for whoever the Democratic nominee was. I even had a feeling that it was not going to be Joe Biden, right? And I was like, whoever they nominate, unless they just like completely go out of left field, which they would never do, and nominate, someone who's like entirely unexpected, which I don't even know who that'd be, but they didn't. Anyway, so I already was not going to be a Democratic voter. Like I'd already made up my mind, and that was the same case in 2020 and 2016. And
you voted for Biden in 2020. What are you talking about?
Nope, I did not.
In the presidential election?
Nope.
I thought you voted. Did you vote for Hillary in the presidential election?
No.
Why did I think you voted for Biden in the presidential election?
I don't know.
Okay.
But so I was not going to vote, right? I already had my mind made up. That was a vote that, they may have felt entitled to that they were not going to get. And after October 7th, my calculus was, okay, despite us not agreeing on like most things, this presents you an opportunity to actually win a vote on one single issue. All you have to do is say one thing, and I will disregard all of your other policy and vote for you. And they see the inverse, right? They're like, oh, this is a vote that we were entitled to, that we lost on the Gaza issue, right? Like, and they're trying to blame that and blame Arabs in that way. I'm like, no, you actually have been fucking up for the last 4+ years. And you continued to also like alienate people. And you didn't even do the bare minimum to earn back like some modicum of those votes. Like, and now it seems like I actually overestimated how much people care about Gaza, right? Like for me, that was like a deciding issue. And I thought more people would leave over that issue, but that seems to have not been the case.
As we thought would.
It seems like people just kind of sat out because like you said, like you can't continue running a political institution or party that doesn't put forth a positive vision for the future. You can't just define yourself as I'm not the other guy.
This is the optimist in me, and I really mean this like wholeheartedly and with like love. I believe that people in this country would vote for fucking socialism. Like I really do. Maybe not if you called it that, but I believe that they would vote for massive social safety nets and social policies if they understood that it directly benefited their communities.
Yeah.
This is like that typical scene that we saw that was like really earth-shattering to people where there was a Fox News hall, remember? Mm-hmm. And they asked the question like, would you believe in healthcare for all?
Yeah.
And people stood up and said yes, even though they had been pre-selected because they were quote unquote conservative.
Yeah.
Like there are real material interests that it does not excuse the racism and misogyny. I don't want to sidestep that because again, it is awful and disturbing and creepy and really we should be uncomfortable with it. And especially the kind of radicalization of young men across racial lines is pretty freaky and like incel icky.
Yep.
And working class people deserve to be taken care of. And it's just such bullshit that we have two parties completely driven by corporate interests that do not give a shit about those people, that do not care that there are poor people all across Pennsylvania who haven't seen, accounting for inflation, have not seen a minimum, like any kind of increase in their like working wage. If anything, if you account for inflation, have probably seen a decrease
for sure
for the last like 20 years of their working lives. Like that's crazy. And the fact that they don't actually give a shit about that, people aren't stupid and they don't appreciate being talked down to like they're morons. Like it just is, it's so frustrating. I also really appreciate it. And actually I'm going to play this clip and maybe you can insert it later, or should I put the mic on it?
You can do both and then we'll see.
Okay. So this is a clip that is from The Daily, which is like, the big New York Times podcast. And it is like the one black guy they have on, Stead is his name. I forget his last name, but he's a political analyst who I kind of appreciate. And here he is trying to say something and is kind of being like sidestepped. So I wanted to play that.
Yeah.
Sits with me. And I think on the other side, the Democratic refusal to see the unpopularity of Joe Biden, the dismissal of anyone who talked about a primary, the demanding of party loyalty, all of that looks ridiculous. And the national picture that shows a consistent desire for change, I think has to be read as, first and foremost, a rejection of the current administration.
Wait, this is a good clip. This is actually not the one I made to play. Sorry. Okay. Here's another one.
You just mentioned how much success Donald Trump had with a variety of voting blocks that, as Lisa, you just pointed out, Democrats had long believed were going to remain loyal to them. But
why? But why? Why did they believe that? Like, that evidence has been clear about the drop-off for a long time, right? Like, we've had 2012, we've had 2016, we've had 2020. Like, we've actually had a lot of evidence to say that the demographic destiny undertone is one that is a faulty premise. The fact that they're holding on to the Obama era, in my opinion, is a racist assumption. I'm saying that word, like, I don't mean it like in a capital R way. But I mean it in
it's
like
a race-based assumption.
I mean, I think I would say lowercase racist. I would say that there is an assumption that it was a failure of imagination, that it couldn't be true.
I hear you. But I think there is a sense of...
I'll just cut it there. But I thought that was so funny that they're like, I don't think you mean racist. I think you mean racially based. But there is something kind of racist, honestly, in the liberal imagination about this idea that, like, obviously Latinos and Arabs will vote in their best interest, and that is us. And, like, even if we are kind of fucking them over, we are owed their vote. Like, you are owed nothing. They are constituents like any other fucking American constituents. And again, if you want to kind of like racially target and go for people, go for the evangelical white right that has been radicalized beyond belief.
Well, the implication there is that these people have historically, because they were part of the most vulnerable people who comprised a significant portion of the working class when the Democratic Party was actually more of the party that of labor, right? And so it made sense that those votes went along with that party. But since the 70s, at least, and since the Democratic Party has continued to abandon labor and no longer be the party of labor, these people, like, they used to vote in their self-interest, and now they're realizing, oh, this is no longer the party of labor. So what am I getting out of voting here? And they're voting according to other considerations.
Yeah, and it also kind of... Oh, sorry.
Well, yeah, again, the assumption is, oh, these used to be like good minorities, and their status and their perception, or, you know, them being perceived as good was predicated on them always just being in the Democratic House, right? And so once they decide, oh, I have other interests that I'm going to vote based on, or other considerations, suddenly they're not worth anything anymore to the Democratic Party. And you see that in just kind of like the vitriolic and contemptuous language that's being applied to them after the results.
Yeah, and you want to play identity politics, then you have to actually think about the concerns of these people, like as constituents. And I think this is like a fundamental misunderstanding also, like a very kind of, it really is against the kind of like the term intersectionality, which comes from the Combahee River Collective, was actually very class-based analysis. And that has been kind of like stripped of a lot of kind of like academic light discourse that's been adopted in politics.
Yeah.
That there's this idea of like, you know, as America becomes more diverse, like it will become more equitable, or like even like, I mean, it's true because again, like Black Americans do vote for progressive policies and also do vote Democrat. But this kind of like icky idea of like Black women will save us, or like Muslim women will save us, or the Latinos will save us. Like no one is saving you.
Yeah.
You need to save yourself. And it's just like, also, I think that these groups are more internally diverse than people realize.
Right.
Like Latino American is an American construction. People who immigrate from different countries like Cuba and Mexico and Venezuela and end up here have different histories that inform like the way that they vote and the way that they think.
Yeah.
And they're not all one like monolithic block. Like, you know what I mean? And the same thing if you're talking about like these categories I'm kind of using sloppily that have a lot of nuance to them, like the Muslim voter, like the Arab voter, like they are separate and they overlap. Like they're not just like one block that you can kind of like say and write off. It doesn't really work like that.
But do you remember when Hillary Clinton was Abuelita?
No, thank God I do not remember that.
Damn.
I do remember when Hillary Clinton was like, sorry.
Oh, no. What were you going to say?
I remember when Hillary Clinton was like, if you're a good Muslim, you will report other Muslims. Right. And it was like, what? Like, we're not all like sleeper cell spies. Like, they've been doing this condescending shit for a long time.
Yeah. With the hot sauce thing, too.
Yeah. Yeah.
There it is. That's three things right there. She got the Muslims. She got black people. She got the
Latinos.
All Latinos.
Yeah. I think the other big thing is like...
Actually, sorry. That actually just reminds me. The other thing that happened early in Kamala's campaign, she was just like, don't worry, guys. We've brought in Hillary Clinton to make sure I know how to win against Trump. And I'm like...
It's probably not a good call. Yeah.
Well, seems to have not worked out.
I was going to say, I do feel like even though Kamala Harris was never going to be like a really interesting candidate, she also was like set up for failure a little bit.
Yeah.
Because like Biden should have just stepped down. That did not give us enough time. The fact that like essentially the Democratic Party picked for us who our candidate was is really not fair, I think. And like not democratic. Like there should have been a primary. We should have gotten to have chosen that person. And that also is like hard to get excited about someone that you didn't get to like directly vote for when you allegedly live in a democracy. Like I don't know if that directly influenced people's, you know, getting out of their bed and actually getting their butts to the polls. Yeah. But it made me feel a lot less excited. I mean, even aside from like her lack of policies and her endorsement of genocide. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, they ran out the clock, right? He took himself out of the race during the last minute and did not give anyone any time to actually run any sort of primary for the campaign. And then the party decided, we're not going to do that. And because they did not do that, she was not at all motivated to have a platform out.
Right.
And then the campaign ran for weeks or months.
Without any policies.
Without anything on the website other than a fundraising link. And yeah, I clearly... Again, while I would like to say she lost on the issue of Gaza and supporting a genocide,
I don't think it helped her.
It certainly did not help.
But it probably wasn't the only or primary issue. Yeah.
But like she didn't have to run like they did not give space within like pre-convention to have a competitive race where her ideas would have to have been put up against ideas from other people in the party, potentially more left-wing people, and she didn't have to respond to anything.
Right. Besides like scary orange guy.
Yeah. So
no, it's a good point. Like in a way, it didn't really force her to clarify her ideas earlier in a way that a primary would have.
And they didn't want that. They just wanted absolute, unflinching, unquestioned, uncritical loyalty behind her. And they just wanted to install her as, you know, or like essentially have another coronation and just be like, well, you're the person, everyone's got to get behind you. And that's clearly just not the case.
It really was a coronation. Yeah. It was someone who was directly chosen. Yeah. They're not really important enough to be disappointed in, but I'm a little bit disappointed in the Green Party. I think it's good to kind of call ourselves out, you know, as we're like sitting here thinking about other calls and perspectives. Yeah. Like, I think we had a little bit of an echo chamber. I really thought they were going to crack at least 3%. I can't believe it was just 0.8%. That was crazy. They barely even blipped.
So I got to say, I'm disappointed because I actually thought the same thing. I was like, whoa, I totally, again, like my underestimation is that I thought just solely on this issue that they would have done a lot better.
Yeah.
Now there's some squirreliness going on in Ohio or whatever. So, but even that's
still
not going to move the needle
5%. Yeah.
A ton. But I was just like getting ready for the arguments that I was about to have about people being like, yeah, you fucked up the election and because your vote actually lost Kamala Harris. I'm like, there's not a single state where Jill Stein garnered the number of votes that is greater than the gap between Trump and Kamala.
Yeah, the margins were not close.
And so I am disappointed that she didn't spoil it in any single swing state or any state at all. Because again, like that's what I was getting ready for. I had already like prepped all the arguments, but it's like clearly that just doesn't.
No, I was, I voted for Harris, but I was there with you on your behalf, thinking about you having to have those arguments.
I was ready, dude, and now I'm kind of like, oh, I guess I don't get to have that argument.
No, I will say I also was disappointed. I don't think it at all affected like the way that they ran their campaign, but their like vice presidential candidate, just like right before the election, awful sound bites that circulated about like trans athletes. And then also just like really unprepared to talk about abortion. And I thought that was pretty disgraceful. Like people care about this issue and are trying to defect to build a future. Like pull yourself together and like get a good soundbite on these two things. And then he like talked it, like kind of rolled it back and like explained, and like there was more nuance to the abortion conversation, but the trans athlete comment I just thought was stupid. And there was also a lot of like attacking other Muslims, like saying like Ilhan Omar isn't really Muslim. And it's just like, we don't need to be doing this. Like, this is so niche already. Like, no one gives a shit what you think about this. It really rubbed me the wrong way. I also like, I've been checking like Jill Stein's Instagram page, and she like, there's no plan for the future. Like, I just do not think they're a serious party. I was ready to kind of think that maybe they were, but there's no like, we didn't reach 5%. Like, here's how we will. Like, I don't know. I'm trying to think about, I was trying to like audit myself a little bit. And I feel like one thing I could really do is join like a group. I mean, this is probably true of like a lot of Americans, I'm guessing. But I feel like, yeah, I feel like I just need to like, it's not enough to like have opinions. And like, we are involved in community and like mutual aid groups essentially in other ways. I think maybe we were a little bit more like meaningfully plugged into that in North Carolina, just thinking about like work that we would kind of tag along to sometimes with other like local nonprofits and stuff. And we do like smaller scale stuff here, but I think I might have to rejoin DSA. I don't know. Like, nothing is perfect. That's a thing. But I think it is important to be involved in something that is like on some level, some kind of grassroots organizing.
Yeah.
And I feel like at least like Summer League kind of came up through DSA a little bit. Like, at least there have been like more progressive, and I understand this is not everyone's cup of tea and that's fair, but from my perspective, like more progressive Democrats that have come through that in a way that I could kind of get behind. But I don't think the Green Party is it for me, like thinking about organizing after this. I mean, I'm open to like if they run a local candidate or if they show themselves differently, but I didn't really get the way that they handled this after they lost.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll have to, I would say give them a little bit of time to see what the reaction will be. But yeah, I agree. Like, if it's a reaction that doesn't seem like they're ready to continue on the momentum, that whatever momentum they've built here, then it's like, maybe it's not the Green Party going forward. And like, you know, I think it's only the day after the election. So like, maybe they're working on their messaging or like figuring stuff out. So who knows? I'm open to either way, but I agree with you. I think the next steps ought to be getting involved in your community. And it sucks because I think people are looking for something that is immediately scalable, right? And I think what people should have learned, and what's become more and more clear with every subsequent election for the last 12 years, is that electoralism is a tool sometimes, but the change we want to see should not be dependent on that. And we need to build something that is a part that is more resilient. And I think the hard truth is that it's going to be hard. There's no fast solution to it. But people, I see this, I think this is a lesson from elections, but also a lesson from some of the disasters that have taken place over the last months and several years, right? Like with, especially, you know, things like Hurricane Helene, people had to immediately rely on their like local organizing networks to be able to get water, food, shelter, and just the support they need, because it took government and like other systems quite a while, right? And so just thinking about that lesson and applying it to this, it's like, we can't expect the system that produces all these crises that we're in to be the sole fix for the crises, right? Because there's just kind of this, they will continue to perpetuate it and ramp it up because it's somewhat beneficial to them. And so, yeah, like getting plugged in, getting to see face to face, like who are the people who I am fighting for on a daily basis, like so that it's not abstract and it's not theoretical and it's like really truly there. And that can look like a lot of different things. Like it can look like hosting events, like reading groups. It can look like doing political work on a smaller level,
mutual aid,
food
work.
distribution, mutual aid. Like I don't want to solely take like I don't believe that like in full solely prefigurative politics and saying like, oh, if we just act as if we live in the world that we want to see, like it'll just like materialize before us. I don't believe that. But I do think that something can come of that level of organizing that maybe we can't see right now.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that assessment. I think we like, continue to use electoral politics strategically. We continue to think about large-scale macro changes that we should implement as soon as we have the power to do so. But then we have to do like an incredible amount of like hyper-local organizing to change like our immediate communities. And so that our immediate communities are ready to push for those macro level changes, you know, like when we have the leverages of power again.
I guarantee you I can probably go talk to a Trump supporter somewhere in Western Pennsylvania and get them to sign a petition for divestment from Israel, like for Pittsburgh.
If
like,
you kind of think about like, no, I agree. If you are kind of talk about like the amount of money that we send abroad and like their wages, like, there's a real way to connect with people on that. That is a source of something that we should find hope in. Yeah. Yeah.
And I'm actually like excited to start doing that soon because one, I think it just shows that, again, like the Democratic analysis of the electorate is just like way off base and like they're just like so far out of touch. So I think as much as you can prove that over the next couple of years, maybe they'll change their approach. My laptop is about to die, so maybe we should any closing thoughts?
Yeah, closing thoughts. Let's do some positive closing thoughts. Okay. Just kind of going back to like it is what is local. Rashida Tlaib got her seat again.
That's great. Yeah, she performed twice as well as Kamala Harris.
Yep. Ilhan Omar, also by a large margin.
Okay, very nice.
AOC, I know some people are mad of her. I'm still a fan. Won by a large margin.
Okay. Yeah, I'm kind of one of those people who's like, fuck her, but whatever.
Our local congressperson, Summer Lee.
Yeah, great. Re-elected. I'm happy about Summer Lee.
Our my adopted home state and Ahmed's home state, Democratic governor broke the Republican supermajority for the state legislature.
Oh, really? So the governor, but also the state legislature itself is
the supermajority it's still a majority Republican, but the supermajority was broken.
That's great.
Which is huge.
So they can't. Yeah, they were doing some really awful shit.
Again, North Carolina, also a state that went for Trump. So like this exists on a large scale in swing states.
Yeah.
Wisconsin.
Oh, I think also looking at how well abortion
I had that on my list.
Performed, even in Florida. Which I know DeSantis, Florida has a terrible rule that says like they needed to have 60%, but 57% in a state that Kamala Harris lost by like 5 points at least.
Yep.
Should tell you that again, the deplorables thing or like writing people off as being like evil because their state went for the guy you defined yourself as being against. There's actually a lot of common ground there.
Yeah, abortion measures passed across the country on local levels and were enshrined into several local state constitutions.
Yep.
My college state of Wisconsin reelected Tammy Baldwin to the Senate, again, even though they went for Trump. Mm-hmm. So I think the point here is that on a local level, it is far more nuanced.
That's why that local work matters so
exactly.
much. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And it shows that I think that we are like a very politically diverse country, but also that like we have the power to kind of reshape what we frame as politics, right? Mm-hmm. Like if I were to canvass tomorrow, I would not use the words Republican or Democrat.
No.
I would literally just say like, how much do you get paid and how much do you think that your job is worth?
Yeah, exactly.
You know, like how do you feel like the people who represent you respect you?
Right.
And if they don't, fuck them. Let's find someone else. Like I think that's the only thing that matters.
Yep.
But yeah, really proud that so many people voted for abortion. Really hope that we're able to hold the line on that.
Yeah. Join in org.
Yep.
Anything else?
That's it.
Okay, this has been a special emergency episode of The Field Between.
Dun, 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 dun. Now living under a Trump presidency. Wish us all luck. Bye.
Yeah, bye.